Welcome back to Media7. Last week's belated release of the 1,500 so-called Wellington cables obtained by WikiLeaks has had a particular impact on another current news story. The cables indicate that the US government leaned on ours over a controversial change to the Copyright Act dealing with internet file sharing. It suggested draft wording and offered $500,000 to support a campaign by local rights owners. The file sharing sanctions recently became law in a separate and still controversial bill, and that has sparked a membership drive by the Pirate Party of New Zealand, which is modelled on similar parties that have won representation in the European Parliament. Can New Zealand's Pirate Party make a mark in our general election? With me now is Pirate Party President Tommy Ferguson. Welcome, Tommy. So how did this start for you?
Well, people in New Zealand have been following the Swedish Pirate Party movement since 2006, and we've been talking about that for quite a while, but things only really came to a head when we started getting organised earlier this year in January and passed a constitution. And well, it was more just that pirate parties around the world were having more and more success, and our election was coming up, and we didn't want to miss out on it.
What's the key to the Pirate Party philosophy anywhere in the world? What's the common thread?
Mostly everyone thinks of us as being mainly about copyright. So we do strongly advocate restoring the balance to copyright, shortening the term, allowing more things under fair use. But we're also about doing the same thing with patents and removing patents on software, as well as basically defending freedom of expression, the right to privacy individually, as well as freedom of information.
Well, let's clear this up. You don't want to abolish copyright per se. You recognise there's a place for it.
Not at all. So the Pirate Party does believe there is a place for copyright. Creators should have some sort of chance to make a buck off what they do.
So a shorter term, say 10 years rather than 70 years.
Absolutely, as well as making it sort of 10 years rather than the life of the author plus an extra amount of time.
Is there anywhere in the world that has model copyright legislation in your view? Is there a model for us to look at?
Well, not that I know about now. Some people cite historical examples, some going back to when copyright was first introduced, when the printing presses were new, and how things worked around then. There have been debates in several centuries about whether copyright is sort of legitimate. We still think it is legitimate, but only in a limited sense, not in the same sense as the sort of distribution industry lobby in America thinks.
We talk a lot about copyright in legal terms and the legislative side of it. What's your take on the moral dimension of copyright? Because we don't talk about that so much anymore. What are the moral rights of creators and rights owners?
Basically, they do have a moral right to basically express themselves and to be acknowledged first and foremost as being the creator of that work. And for most people, that is more important than the copyright and anything else.
How about control over it? What say, yeah, I'm in the band, I don't particularly want my stuff to be on BitTorrent. I find that impersonal and something of an insult. Do I have the right to object to that?
Well, if people are putting it on BitTorrent to save money from buying a reasonably priced track that you have, then while your track is new, while you're still contributing something there, then yes, you should have a right to stop it. What you don't have a right to stop is to prevent any particular person or group of people from seeing it at all after you've released it. So that's also, for example, when you have different release dates in different countries. So I don't think that artists have a moral right to do that.
Well, we'll see how the membership drive goes. I think you could make the election a little bit more interesting. So, thank you, Tommy Ferguson.
Confident.
Now, the Polaroid camera continues to hold a special place in popular culture, but after the cameras went out of production in 2007 and film sales stopped 2 years later, it seemed the place was a historical one. Not so, as Jose Barbosa found out.
This is my grandparents' SX70 Polaroid camera, but by the time it had been passed to me, the march of the digital was in full stride and Polaroid had stopped making film. Like myself, millions of enthusiasts around the world were gutted.
I felt like sort of a rug had been pulled out from under me.
Dave Bias and Ann Bowerman have launched a website, SavePolaroid.com, begging for someone to keep making the film.
Fortunately for Dave, an old friend had been busy behind the scenes.
Doc, we call him Doc, his Florian Cops is a doctor. Doc flew here to the States, and he basically told me that at the closing party of the Polaroid factory, he met and talked to Andre Bozeman, who had run the Polaroid factory for Polaroid for years, and they had basically bought the factory.
Thus began the impossible project. Its hipsterific goal, to make new film for the world's Polaroid cameras.
I think a lot of people just expected we would go into the factory and flip a switch and Polaroid film, would actually start spitting out of the machines again. And it's of course far, far, far more complicated than that. That the negative that's in the film was made at a factory outside of Boston that was destroyed years ago. And there was no way to make more without rebuilding a $10 million, $20 million factory. There was an enormous amount of work that went into sourcing these materials and finding these vendors who could work with us and doing it without, running ourselves into the ground.
The new film's a hit, but for some enthusiasts, there's still sticking points.
I'm a bit disappointed with what I've seen. I haven't handled it in the flesh, but I've seen reproductions of it on their website, and to me, it looks like it gives you the sort of effects that you'd get if you used Polaroid film that was outdated and ready to throw away. But if they were to produce something that was really like the original SX70 film, then I'd be a customer.
I'm almost positive that when our PX680 film comes on the market in just a few weeks, that's the film, that's the magic stuff. It's a beautiful color, and it really harkens to what Polaroid did when they first announced color SX70 films.
Recreating the past is clearly a difficult and expensive business. For example, a roll of 8 frames costs nearly 25 New Zealand dollars, and that's not including shipping from the States. But the rewards are clearly there for those who want to invest.
There's a certain exquisiteness about Polaroid SX70 pictures that you don't get from other media. And I think also the uniqueness of each individual picture is another advantage. It's not a reproduction, it's not a print, it's both the negative and the print, all in one perfect, glossy, colourful little thing. I love them.
And in the Polaroid incident, that's our show. Thanks again to Emily Cooper, Veronica McCarthy and Tommy Ferguson. And thanks to you for watching. We'll be back with Media7 at the same time next week. Until then, goodbye.